Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Chapter 21 of my Fire Emblem 6 hard mode 0% gross playthrough. We are your hosts, DonDon151 and Mekkah.
Hello everyone. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very much hyped for this chapter. Chapter 21 has always been one of my favorite chapters in the game, and it's probably many people with me. It is a very epic battle storyline-wise, because you fight Murgleis as the boss, who is the assistant of Zaphiel, pretty much the main bad guy of this game. It's also very epic because this chapter has a lot of enemies that you need to fight, and they're symbolic of burn. They are mostly wyvern riders and wyvern lords, and with them are some very powerful paladins, some very powerful sages, a little bit of everything. It even has mana keys in it. This chapter takes very long, it's very large, and it can be very tedious, it's very challenging. You have to use a lot of units. It's very late in the game, so your units are all trained and ready and buffed up. So it's a great measure of strength, basically, to get through this chapter. It's a great war.
Yes, but for me, it's more of a measure of stealth than it is for strength, because as you'll be seeing later on, we won't be fighting that many enemies. We'll be very careful where we go, and we're going to explain that mechanic later on. What I'm doing right here in the preparations menu is, aside from giving our deployed units the items that they'll need for this chapter, for all of our undeployed units, we're basically having them deposit everything that they own into the convoy, because you might notice that we're deploying Murgleis for this chapter. We can't sell anything in the preparations menu in this game, unlike in later installments of the Fire Emblem series. But so that means that we're going to have to sell items during the chapter. And in order to sell items from the convoy during the chapter, Murgleis has to have all the items in the convoy to begin with. So my theory here is that Roy picked up a book about Karl Marx, and he's decided to switch the army over to a communist system. So he's having everyone turn in their private property.
I guess that is one way to look at it. I mean, Roy does have red hair. On the other hand, he's not having everyone hand in their weapons, just the youngest guys, which is very strange. You would think the oldest guys would retire first, but they're all playing this chapter. So that is one strange thing. My personal explanation is just that everyone realizes that they suck and just hand in their weapons, just giving up on fighting altogether, and living a peaceful life on the bench.
To elaborate on your retirement hypothesis, Mekkah, I actually sort of agree with that, because it's a bit paradoxical here, almost, that we have the two oldest members in the army, now three, because of our new recruit here, Yodel. He's that bishop who appeared next to Roy. Yodel is a pretty decent utility unit. He's pretty comparable to Niime, because stat-wise, he's pretty similar. His offensive stats are a little worse in every category, but he has better HP and much better resistance. His true claim to fame, though, is that he has a base S rank in staffs, and so he has a lot of staff utility. He's going to be one of our secondary staffers who we're going to be using to transfer units across the map, like we're doing here with Perceval and Niime.
Yeah, this is pretty important, especially this route we're taking. Perceval and Niime are just going to sit here in this position and fend off a couple of enemies that are sitting there, so that everyone else can go through that area safely. And then a lot of other people are going to sit around the armory and start selling items 5 at a time. Murgleis needs to sit next to the armory so that the other people that are going to be selling items can access the convoy, just like that. And because they're mounted, they get to move again and move a little to left, right, or down, so that someone else can access the armory, and this way we can sell at least 20 items per turn.
Yeah, it's almost like an assembly line of item selling. Usually assembly lines are for making things, but here we're kind of like getting rid of things. On this enemy phase, the positioning of Perceval and Niime is very important. You might notice there's a group of wyvern riders and a wyvern lord below where Perceval and Niime are located. Right here, Perceval blocks off the wyvern lord. He's like the sole promoted unit at the very bottom from attacking Niime, and the wyvern lords in this map are very dangerous. They have max 26 strength. They're kind of fast in that Niime can't double them, only Perceval can, and they're extremely bulky. So they can one-hit KO Niime even after she's had the plus 7 HP from the Angelic Robe, and also a plus 1 defense boost from the Forest, which means that we need either Perceval to take care of them, or like we did earlier, we had Niime put one of them to sleep, and he's going to be out of commission for the rest of the chapter.
Yeah, I mean, Niime can survive the rest of the enemies because she's using Nosferatu, if she even gets hit, because she's on a forest tile, so she's pretty fine in that regard. We need Niime to be there to continue the warp chain that we're going to be using. You can see that our other flying units are working on getting people across the mountains. Basically making sure that we avoid the reinforcements, because the way reinforcements work in this game, or at least in this chapter, is there's some reinforcement zones, and if one of your units ends their turn in those reinforcement zones, then these reinforcements start spawning and they pretty much don't stop until they're designed to, which can last a pretty high amount of turns. So what we do instead is we fly over the mountains or use the warp staff to avoid these reinforcement zones, and this way we don't have to fight all these paladins and all these extra wyvern riders and wyvern lords, just the ones that are there at the start of the map. And this makes the chapter from fighting like 50 enemies at a time to just fighting whatever the beginning count is, which is a lot less.
Yeah, there are still quite a few enemies on the map to begin with. I mean, there's something like 4 groups of wyvern riders and wyvern lords, and then there's also those very tough sages and bishops that we have to deal with. So they're no joke to begin with, and we obviously don't want to have to deal with any more of those enemies, especially the wyvern lords that could pretty much destroy us. I mean, I would really like to have one of those enemy wyvern lords on my team. So, too bad none of them can join.
I mean, there is one wyvern lord boss that has a face in this chapter, so you would think that you can recruit him, but you can't. His name is Gil, and he's pretty much not going to appear. He has some kind of connection story-wise with Zeiss and Milady, but unfortunately he doesn't get to join us.
So earlier I had Niime berserk that enemy sage, and for those of you who are not familiar with berserk does, it causes a unit to attack kind of indiscriminately between friend and foe. Essentially, it turns into an AI-controlled unit that can't tell unit allegiances. So the sage will prefer to attack enemy wyvern riders because he can double them, and also because he can one-round KO them with his Hellfire Tome. And that protects units such as Zeiss and Milady, who don't have a very high resistance stat, and who would therefore be at significant risk from that enemy.
Yeah, you can see how much measures we're taking just to deal with these promoted units. We just can't fight all of them one-on-one. I think Perceval managed to kill one of them with a killer axe, and that was just because he could crit. And the other ones have just been berserked, put to sleep, avoided, whatever. So you could almost say that we're almost no match for these promoted units at this point. We really have to come up with creative ways to deal with them. And we also see that we're very serious about this this selling issue. We're even getting a Knight Crest from a village and then flying it all the way back to the armory or the shop just to be able to sell it.
Yeah, we have to put in a lot of effort into this sort of selling thing that we have going on here.
Yeah, I mean, you're deploying people just for selling these, so that shows just how important it is. Keep an eye on Niime here.
By the way, the reason why I sold stuff in previous chapters is because I don't have to deploy an extra unit in this chapter to sell things, because it would make this chapter go a little faster that way.
Yeah, we saw that Yodel put another unit to sleep, the sage that was on the shrine where the throne is. And the reason we're doing this is so that when Perceval gets there with Roy, who was just given to him by Zeiss, can dump Roy there without Roy getting killed. And Zeiss also just took a vulnerary and a Delphi shield just to survive the enemy phase.
On the previous enemy phase, Zeiss didn't really have a problem surviving because he was only in range of a couple of archers, and those archers have longbows which have measly 5 might, so they don't really hit Zeiss very hard even if he doesn't have a Delphi shield. But now he's kind of in the thick of all the enemies, so he does need the Delphi shield in addition to nearly full HP to survive most of the enemy archers. One thing that I should note as a point of AI manipulation is that you might notice Perceval now has Niime's Nosferatu Tome, which means that Niime doesn't have anything equipped. This is because if she does that, then some of the enemies will prefer to attack her instead of Zeiss because she can't do anything back and she has very low HP in defense. But she's also standing in a forest, so her chances of getting hit are pretty low anyway.
I've never seen an old woman protecting a young, strong knight like that, but I guess it works. We should probably talk about Murdoch while he's still alive, because Perceval just did like half HP damage to him.
Murdoch is the last enemy general boss that we're going to be fighting in the game. Stat-wise, he's one of the toughest. He has very high HP, very high defense. But the reason why he's one of the easier general bosses in the game is because, unlike the rest of them, he has an axe equipped instead of a lance, which means that the Armorslayer that we always use against general bosses not only has plus 20 hit relative to if it had weapon triangle disadvantage, but it also has plus 6 might because of how effective damage works. So Murdoch's extra defense really is an advantage to him, but not only that, we get a hit bonus and a void bonus, and that makes Murdoch one of the easiest general bosses that we have to fight in the game.
Yeah, that's actually pretty sad when you think about it. They put all this time into hyping him up, and then in the end, he's easier than all the ones that had spares and other stuff. You can see we're in a hurry to sell more stuff now because more people have joined in. Shin has gone back to sell stuff, and I believe Yuno also went back to sell stuff. So, as you might have guessed, this is actually one of the last turns in the chapter. It's actually the very last turn.
We've pretty much exhausted most of the stuff that we want to sell. Things like elixirs, red gems, those kinds of things are worth a lot of money. Everything else that we have, either we need for the remainder of the game, or they're not worth a whole lot of money. So what we're going to do with all this money is have Milady visit the secret shop, which she does with the member card that she just sold. And this secret shop is special because it's one of the few secret shops in the series. Actually, I think it's the only one that sells boots as a stat booster. And you can imagine we're going to be buying many of them. Mekkah, how many do we buy in the secret shop?
I wrote it down somewhere. I think it's 33. So think about that. A girl goes to a shop and buys 33 pairs of boots. And then the shopkeeper asks her, what are they for? Well, some of them are for my friends.
Leave it to Milady with her fashion sense, I guess. We also need to buy 8 other stat boosters. Of them, there are 2 Speedwings, 5 energy rings, and an Angelic Robe for other purposes. Perceval needs the Speedwings to be able to double some enemies later on. The energy rings will go to several other units because some of them, like Yodel, for example, need the energy rings for extra staff range. And the Angelic Robe is at the very end of the game for Cecilia because we need her to participate in some very strange AI manipulation that we're going to explain once we get there. Among the other benchmarks that we reached in this chapter, you might have seen Igrene just reached A-rank bows, which is going to be useful exactly one time later on. And much earlier, Niime also reached S-rank Dark, which means that when we get the Apocalypse Tome at the end of the next chapter, she's going to be able to use it for the massive +5 magical bonus.
Yeah, you will notice here that everyone who has nothing to do this turn or could have killed an enemy instead decides to use a pair of boots because we cannot use those in the preparation menu once again. So every time a unit has a day off, pretty much they will put on a pair of boots and give themselves 2 extra movement.
Unfortunately, Perceval can't join in on the boots fun, but that's because he's too busy doing actual work in killing the boss, and he just barely does so because the Armorslayer broke right on time. So we have Roy seize the throne. There's a bit of a cutscene here because the next chapter is one that's related to like a certain story event in the game related to Roy. That's chapter 21 completed in 4 turns. We will see you next time.
See ya.